So it was like November of 2024. Hold on, I actually have it right in front of me. Yeah, November of 2024, the New York Times dropped this piece. But today, January 16th, 2026, they dropped the podcast with live interviews. Well, not live interview, but on tape interviews of the parents involved. And it is a riveting piece of work. I highly recommend everybody listen to today's The Daily. It was an excellent episode. And it is an episode about two parents whose names are, Daphna and Alexander, who goes by Xander. They're married to each other. And they were trying to conceive a baby. They already had one daughter. And they went to the IVF clinic because I think the mom was in her 40s, needed help, and she conceived another child. She gave birth to the child, a girl. And they did notice shortly after the baby was born that the baby did not look like them. They are, the mother is, I think, they said she has red hair, or she comes from like a long line of redheads, and her hair's more like light brownish red, and the husband's more fair too. Their skin seems very fair. And their baby, it would come to look more so over the first 3 months, looked darker skinned and looked Asian. And, dark skinned Asian is not something a Maureen Callahan or a Megyn Kelly could produce if we're married to guys who look anything like us. Mm-hmm. So they started to get a little nervous, as I think any IVF parent would, because let's face it, it's not like having a baby naturally. We're like, damn well who fathered your child.
Exactly.
So they were getting nervous, and eventually they did decide to do a parent test, like a genetic test, where they sent in for results, and they sent their babies like cheek swab in. And think of it, like what a scary thing to do, because like, what if the outcome is not what you want? Then what? What are you going to do next? I think a lot of parents would just like never ask, but they felt like they had to. They felt like, what if this is not our child and we've effectively stolen somebody else's child without any fault of our own? And also, what if the child we conceived in a petri dish, we all know that's how IVF is done, is out there being raised by someone else? So they sent the cheek swabs into this company that will run the tests. And the mother talks about how she called and said, when am I getting the results? And they were like, we have them, but you'll get them sometime next week. And the mother's like, please don't do that to me. And the woman was like, we'll have them to you in an hour. And somehow they got like an envelope to them. Maybe it was just an email. I don't know. But here is that piece of the Daily podcast. Listen.
So I open it up. It's a jumble of words and numbers at first. There's two PDFs. I lock in on one for the, father, one for the mother. So I open up the father one, and I'm going through the numbers, and I'm going through the letters and the words, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And then at the bottom, there it is, 99.9% positive that the subject is not the father. And your reaction was really quick. It was just like, what about me? What about me?
Yeah, because I'm in full panic mode. I'm like pacing with the baby.
You're holding her, and you're like, okay, well, what about me? So I click on the other attachment for the mother.
Then he has a big, long sigh without any words.
Yeah, and it said 99.9% chance you're not the mother.
Neither one of them is the genetic parent of Maymay. She's not the biological mom. He's not the biological dad. And this beautiful baby who has made their lives so whole and feels so complete and has brought them so much joy is really, in a sense, a genetic stranger.
Maureen.
It was, I couldn't understand how the mother in particular was so composed in retelling the story, because I think your mind could go to some very dark places. Like, if the embryo wasn't accidentally destroyed, if it's not sitting in a freezer, it's been implanted in someone else. And who are these people? And where is my baby?
Yes. And I think the very first thought I would have, which would be, someone's going to take my baby. like my baby that I carried and I birthed, and I use Sarah Jessica Parker's favorite word, and that I've been raising and nursing for 3 months. They've had this baby. I'm going to lose this baby. I'm going to have to give this baby to somebody because it turns out she's not mine. And the thought of that for any mother would be totally devastating.
You know, I know it's a shorter episode, but I wish they had touched on this now that you bring it up. She did give birth to that child. She carried that child for 9 months, 10 months, gave birth to it, nursed it, stayed up with it all night. You know, that child was hers in so many ways. That child was hers. And when you get to the point where they figure out what's happened and the grief that comes along with knowing, like, even though they knew, like, evolution kicks in. This is not our child.
Yep.
But this is our child.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's the same as like an adoptive mom and dad 100% feel that this is their child. They know biologically it's not their child. But every adoptive parent I know says you lose that very soon after you get that child. Like there's a little bit in the beginning, like, okay, this is not ours genetically. But very soon after, it's forgotten. This is your child. And also knowing for this baby, you are the only mother.
Yes.
And you know in your heart, you are going to be torn apart from this child. Like this child's going to lose the only mother it's ever known. It's so devastating. Honestly, I listened to this episode several times. I teared up, and I have to give credit to the New York Times. They did a great job with the storytelling. And then, so now they know. And they hire a lawyer who contacts the fertility clinic to say, oh my God, you know, you implanted someone else's baby in Daphne. And the fertility clinic goes back and checks its records and figures out what other transfers they call them when they put the embryo inside of you, were done that day. And they do figure out whose baby this is. And now the question is, okay, we found, they call their daughter May. We found May's real parents, her biological parents. Where's our embryo? Because we fertilized an embryo too. Did it not take? Because you can fertilize an embryo and it can not take. Like, I mean, for lack of a better term, it kind of melts, or like it has enough genetic defects that it doesn't like work out. Or you discarded it accidentally. Or did you put it in May's biological mom? Which is what happened. So May's biological mom, who is Asian, I think, no, she's Latina, and May's biological dad is Asian. So indeed, the baby that they're raising as May looks Latina and Asian because she is. They've been raising a white, you know, fair, I don't know if she had red hair, but like obviously much more light-skinned and light-haired baby, who's a lot larger too than little May. They've been calling their baby Zoe. And it turns out they had similar worries about their baby because they too realized that this is a picture of Zoe, who doesn't look Asian or Latina. I know, but as sweet as they come. And they had this worry in the back of their heads, but they, unlike the first couple, had not done anything about it. I'm sure they were living in fear. It's just like
the babies were only about a month or two old, right?
I think they were 3 months old
when they began. Okay.
Yeah. But they didn't have to go through the hellacious period that Daphne and Xander had to go through because they did not do genetic testing. They just got a call one day from the fertility clinic saying, oh my God. I mean, they had a terrible dose of news, but they didn't have like the anticipatory period that Daphne and Xander did. They got the call saying, your baby's not your genetic baby. You do have a biological child. It was implanted in Daphne, who now would like her baby back and would like to give you her baby. Although it wasn't really clear what the remedy was going to be. The clinic didn't actually say that, but it was just like, hey, FYI, made a mistake, take care. And then they talk about how things would go down. Like they decided to meet the 4 parents with the babies. I'm trying to remember the second shot that we have, Deb. Is it from the meeting? stand by. Hold on. Okay. Let's hear it. Here's the second soundbite from the Daily.
So we have some information. We found, the lab has found her parents. They think they know who her parents are.
They are pretty sure they have identified who May's biological parents are.
Wow.
Now, that couple also is raising a young girl who is the same age as May.
We don't know if that's another embryo of theirs, if that is your embryo, if that is someone else's embryo. We don't know anything about that other baby. But we are pretty sure that this is May's parents.
So it turned out to be the case that their child, Zoe, was being raised by, the Latina mom is going by Annie for purposes of the story, and the dad, I think, is unnamed. So Annie, who's Latina, is raising Zoe, but Zoe's not hers. Daphne, who's the fair-skinned redhead, is raising May, who's not hers. And now they have to decide what to do. And they say this. Listen, this is in the article that was written up back in November of 24. On the last day of the year, Daphne and Alexander stood in their living room waiting to meet Zoe, their biological baby, for the first time. They could hear her crying as Annie and her husband approached their front door. The sound was eerily like Olivia's cry, because Daphne and Alexander have an older sister named Olivia, a first child. The sound was eerily like Olivia's cry at that age, as if emerging from a time capsule. Listening to it crystallized everything Daphne and Alexander had been feeling for the past 2 weeks, that there was a child out there in the world so close, but whom they couldn't see or hold or comfort. They lived 10 minutes away from each other. Daphne bounced May in her arms as they waited for the doorbell to ring. Alexander swore a nervous curse, and May stared at him, a look of consternation on her face, reaching for her father with her tiny hand. Both couples had made other plans that day for their older children, because little Zoe had an older sister too. Their parents knew it would be hard enough to manage their own emotions without having to manage the siblings too. The bell finally rang, and then Annie was inside, smiling at the baby in Daphne's arms, reaching for her. "I'm sorry," she said, weeping, her breath ragged. She kissed May's cheek twice. This is the baby she's been raising that isn't hers, and buried her face in the crook of the baby's neck. She sat down on the couch, her backpack still on. "How are you? How are you?" she asked, holding May in her lap so she could marvel at her face through tears. So this is, let me correct myself, this is Annie meeting her own biological daughter for the first time. Then they talk about Daphne holding her baby, who's Zoe, for the first time. She was shocked by how different Zoe felt, how big Zoe was compared to May. She realized that none of the clothing she had bought for this daughter would fit. Soon the husbands were holding the babies. Both mothers' gazes veered from the sight of their own child in someone else's arms. Think of this, moms out there. It's your baby. You've raised the baby. You carried the baby. You gave birth to the baby. You've been nursing the baby for 3 months. Now another woman is holding your baby, and you're going to have to give this baby up. You are not going to be able to keep this baby. It's so fucking devastating. Veered from the sight of their own child in someone else's arms to the sight of the other child in their husband's arms. Each was doing the best she could to let the other mother have all the psychic space she needed with her daughter. For almost 2 weeks, the families visited every other day, sometimes at Daphne's house, sometimes at Annie's house. Often the two mothers did what Alexander came to think of as the mama dance. Each would go to change a child's diaper, then step back for a moment. "Is it okay if I'm getting emotional thinking about this. Can you imagine, asking for permission if you could change your own baby's diaper because you didn't know your baby because somebody else carried it? Would you rather that They had endless tiny details to discuss. Does she use a binky? How long does she nap? Do you hold her until she falls asleep and then put her down, or just put her down? What's her favorite bedtime music? How much did she weigh?" The couples were inventing a new kind of relationship as they went, and it was far from a given that the transition would go smoothly. Then they write this. On January 16th, the families each had their babies. January 16th, which is 2 years ago, I think exactly. I think this was, yeah.
Yes.
The families each held their babies overnight for the first time, and Daphne started to feel the connection she'd been longing to feel. When she gave Zoe, again, this is her biological child, who she's just getting to know, a bath. Before bedtime, she took her daughter in her arms, inhaled the scent of her head, felt her soft, downy hair. Somehow she smelled like home, like their towels, like their shampoo, maybe even their pheromones. Daphne couldn't help thinking of May, 10 minutes away, now at Annie's and her husband's home. May seemed farther along developmentally than Zoe, and Daphne worried that the change would be harder for her. Worried that like her May's going to know she's been switched. That night, in fact, May over at Annie's house was crying inconsolably. Annie was distraught that she could not comfort her, her heart breaking for a baby she already loved, but who was sobbing, she was sure, for a mother Annie could not possibly be at that moment. Oh my God. This is so heartbreaking. Ultimately, they wind up thinking that they're just going to switch the babies, right, and they're going to have to go cold turkey because it's just too hard on the families to do this half in, half out thing. And they try that and it doesn't work. The mothers miss the babies and they wind up coming up with like a way to live. It was around COVID, almost like on a family compound or in a way that's very integrated. And like Annie allows her child, her biological child, to call Daphne Mama D. And they find a way to keep the relationship alive for both parents with the daughter that is not actually theirs, which like is a relief somehow. I mean, like as a mother, I'm just like, oh my, thank God. Because it just raises the question, what is motherhood? Like, what is parenthood? Is it, you'd want your biological child back. There's no question. You'd want your biological child, but who is the mother of the little baby at 3 months in? Is it that other mother 10 minutes away who's got the biological claim, or is it you who carried the baby, gave birth to the baby, have been nursing the baby and love the baby, and the baby loves you? What is parenthood? And Maureen, I have to tell you, it made me think about surrogacy for like gay men. Mm-hmm. This has become more and more controversial. And I have lots of gay men friends in my life who've used surrogates to have babies, and I have celebrated with them and sent them baby gifts. And I never really gave a lot of thought to what it was doing to a baby to take it away from its biological mother. I mean, the surrogate carries the child. Sometimes the surrogate is the biological mother and it's her eggs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes they use a donor egg and you just find a surrogate who will carry the baby. Mm-hmm. But you think about the baby who gets taken out of the mother, like the one who birthed it, her arms, and given to two people who are strangers to the baby. I don't know. I love my gay friends too much to weigh in negatively on it. You know what I mean? Like it's too painful for me to think of what if one of my sons ever turned out to be gay? They're not gay. I already know they're straight, but like, would I be okay with them just never having children? And I know people in the Catholic faith and the Christian faith feel very strongly about this, that it's deeply immoral and wrong. But anyway, the whole thing just raises so many questions about IVF, which I'm also biased on because I used. I know my kids are mine. Raises questions about surrogacy, raises questions about messing with God's will, and then just raises questions about whether these fertility clinics need to be much, much better regulated. Because the lawyer in the piece points out that they say they did file a lawsuit against the clinic for medical malpractice, negligence, and breach of contract. I don't know where it landed. But this lawyer who specializes in these claims says, while he's encountered fewer than 10 cases in which an embryo was transferred to the wrong woman, which is, what do you mean? Like, how many more are there? Okay, you've encountered fewer than 10. That doesn't mean there are fewer than 10. But he believes that the public becomes aware of only a fraction of the errors that occur in these labs. And he points out that they're underregulated relative to most medical procedures, or says, this is what a law professor says in the piece. And also, they point out that the reason it was uncovered here is because the race of the children was different.
Exactly. That was my point. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
You're definitely right. They need to be regulated far more with far more scrutiny. I believe there's been at least one case of a fertility clinic where the actual physician running it was replacing the sperm with his sperm.
With his own.
You know?
Yeah.
There's that. I'm pro surrogacy for whoever wants it. I think it is complicated. It is emotionally painful. It's not easy. I think when all parties go into it willingly and know that, you know, so heartbreak is there, yes, but also for people who are so desperate to have a child, and this is their only recourse, and there are angels among us who do it. And you know what I learned recently? Often, women who are surrogates tend to get pregnant in their own relationships shortly thereafter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
The experience
they're replacing. It's kind of, I don't know if it's a replacement. That might be the incorrect word, but it has created a sort of a need to have a baby. I actually found this story one of hope, and I found it actually quite heartwarming because the way they build the story, and you're with these people, but Daphne and Xander in particular, because the other family doesn't really talk. The agony. There's a moment where Daphne talks about she's got Zoe back, and May's 10 minutes away, but she would keep it together during the day, and then she would go into the shower and she would weep.
Yeah.
And her husband describes the sounds as like a wounded animal,
like wailing.
Yeah, and that she at some point she had like a moment where she said to herself, I have to be there for Zoe, because Zoe started crying when Daphne left the house for a minute to throw the trash out, and she came back and Zoe was hysterical, and she was like, that's it. But that they like every person in the story seems like a wonderful person.
They do. They seem like really good people.
They came together. The mothers one of the mothers could have been like, completely acrimonious, bitter. I'm not giving you any access to this kid. It's mine.
Mm-hmm.
All of those horrible thoughts. And instead, these girls will grow up knowing each other.
A new year means new financial goals like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower right now and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you are a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, just text MK to 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy by January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 and claim your eligibility today. Again, just text MK to the number 989898 to check it out. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.